Welcome back to my channel. So usually I do book reviews and talk about other bookish things, but I thought today I would tell you a little bit about myself through books and my journey of reading. So I guess the best place to start is the first series or real book I remember reading. I'm not going to count any of the smaller, like large picture children books. I don't see them as influential on me than big chapter books. So the first book that I remember reading was Boxcar Children. My mom would sit in the rocking chair with me and rock me to sleep while she read Boxcar Children. We had the first book, and I think she probably read through it like 2 or 3 times. I remember specifically too asking her to read to me while I was in the tub. I think this was a great like foreshadowing to know that I would enjoy podcasts, because I was like, I can't not be entertained for a moment. So she would very kindly sit on the toilet and read to me while I was taking my bubble bath. And I think it's kind of inevitable that I would have loved reading because my mom enjoys books so much and reading so much, and I think she really instilled that in me. Too, in relation to reading Boxcar Children, I didn't know it was a series when I first read it, seeing as we had read the same one 2 or 3 times. And then I got into, I believe it was the 2nd grade, and there were more books. I was so excited. And so the teacher was like, you want to read extra? Please take the book home with you. So I came back home with the 2nd book, and I was so excited to tell my mom about it because I thought she enjoyed Boxcar Children a lot too. In hindsight, I don't know. I don't know how much she liked it or didn't like it, but I was so excited. So I read through so many of those. But I do remember one instance of reading further into that series. Every day, it took an hour from when I got on the bus in the morning to getting off the bus at school. And of course, the reverse was true coming back home. So I didn't even have the chance to develop any kind of car sickness. I could finish my homework on the bus and I could read on the bus. And I remember one afternoon on the way home from school, I was reading a Boxcar Children book. And in this story, the kids are running around, maybe trying to find somebody, get everybody together, something like that. And there's a tornado on the horizon, and everybody's worried about this big impending storm. And I was so caught up in the story and the details that when I got off the bus, got my backpack on, and I was going out, I wasn't looking out any windows, but I thought that the weather from the story was the weather in real life. That's how immersed I got. And so I stepped off the bus, and I think I maybe had a thought of, oh, I'm going to have to walk home in the rain. And it was a bright, shiny, sunny afternoon. And I think that's the first time I got so like wholly engrossed in a book. So, as you might have guessed, because it took me an hour to get to and from school every single day, I live fairly far outside of town. I have since joked with people now that I have moved out of that area that I grew up in the woods, and everybody laughs. And then I say, no, really, I could not see another building from my home, and like it took me like 2 hours to get in to get groceries and stuff like that. And then they're like, oh, snap, like you mean it. But it's fun to joke about, and I was always really jealous of kids who would like get to live in a cul-de-sac or ride their like bike to go see their friends. But I had my books, so I had my adventures there and my friends there. Reading for me kind of fell off after Boxcar Children. I think I quickly got disenchanted with the kind of Scooby-Doo logic of a mystery where it's always the person who gets the least screen time or something like that. And there's some secret motive that there's no way that you really could have known about before until there's the unmasking and they explain what was going on. And I grew tired of that, so I stopped reading for a little while. Well, then I heard about Harry Potter. I don't know what was wrong with past me. I used to think I will never read Harry Potter or books like that because I'm not a nerd. I don't know what was wrong with past me because I have so fully embraced being a nerd. More specifically, a literary nerd, like so wholeheartedly. But young Becky was silly, thought that it was nerdy to read books. And so one Christmas, my aunt, she would do this little like bingo game and you could win prizes. They were usually less expensive presents. No single thing on the table was more than $10, but it was a little bit of a fun way to maybe get a few extra goods to take home by playing bingo. And so I won. And I walked up to the table and she points to this rectangular present. I ask her, are you sure? Are you sure I'm gonna like it? Because they were all wrapped and I didn't know. And she goes, yeah. So I pick it up and I unwrap it and it's Harry Potter. Actually, it's this. I don't rebuy books that I already have. This is still the original book that I got by at least the 5th grade from my aunt. And so I don't want to read Harry Potter. That's a nerd book. But I finally caved. She really thought I was going to like it. She made a deal with me. She was like, read at least this far into it. And then if you don't like it, that's fine. I was wrong. So fine. So I start reading it and I fell in love. And I decided that I loved fantasy. And so I read the whole book. I found out it was part of a series. I got 2 and 3. And I don't remember how young I would have been at the time. I think because this is where my series goes from being paperback to hardback, that I had to wait on the 4th book to come out. That was when I caught on to the series. But so that had revitalized my love of reading, and I just dug in and I read so many different things. I would usually have a stack of 4 or 5 books from the library at all times because you never know what you're going to want to read. I remember some ones that really stood out to me that I read when I was younger like that is I got really into Tamara Pierce. I actually love this old edition cover. The one that I read from my library was still the mass market size, but it was hardback. Actually, I remember I picked this up from my local library, not my school library, and it wasn't even this one. It was her Protector of the Small series, and I picked up the 2nd book, and I got 3 or 4 pages into it, and I was like, they're expecting me to know a lot. This doesn't seem right. And then I look at the beginning, and I see this big long list of all these other books, and so I always love to start at the beginning. So I went back and I picked up Pierce's very first Tortall book and started reading from there. And I've loved all of them, except for the Becca Cooper one. You'd think I would like that. Nope, didn't much care for it. But I felt like these books were quite formative for me as a kid. And the other series that I want to talk about that I enjoyed a lot, when I was young, is the Artemis Fowl series. Since becoming an adult, I've gone back and I've bought up some of the books that I read in the library. I think with this series, I started when there were at least 3 of them, maybe even 4 of them. But I remember waiting for the 5th one and being really excited when it came out. 2, this wasn't until quite later, but one day when I went to pick up the next Artemis Fowl book, that was in the child section, not even the young adult section, I noticed that it had been bought up by Disney and it had new covers. So I quickly leapt at buying this box set so I could get the old ones that look like books. But I do not much care for the ones with characters on the front. They just don't do my boy justice. But it was in this series that I found out that I absolutely love the boy genius trope, or I'm just a sucker for a clever plot. And I think that is why I have since enjoyed heist narratives a lot more, or books about thieves. They just make me really excited. Another section before we get out of high school is manga. I remember distinctly that I was looking through a book fair, which of course I loved. I found a backwards book, as so many people in my very rural town like to call manga. And I picked it up and it opened different. That was odd. This idea for a story sounds really neat. I like this idea of storytelling. And so I picked up Fruits Basket. And I enjoyed it so much, and just the way of telling these kinds of stories so much, that I passed it around to all my friends. And I was so excited because we actually ended up buying the whole series with one person buying 2 books, since they go so fast, and just trading them amongst ourselves. I've since gotten rid of them because I decided I don't like Fruits Basket that much anymore. But I had books 1 and 2, and I had the last 2 books of the series. I didn't have to buy any of the books in between because all my other friends bought them and we shared reading them all. Now I'm a little bit more picky with my manga and anime. I really only say that I like 2 anymore, and 1 is Case Closed, which that was another series that I was like, oh, I'm not gonna watch this. It's a mystery, and I've already decided I don't like mysteries because of the boxcar children. And then I saw an extremely clever plot, and I just thought that was so exciting. And so I have been a huge fan and probably watched all 800 episodes. I'm sure there are more out since I've caught up, but I just really enjoy the series a lot. So that was a big part of my later middle school and high school years, is reading manga along with the actual chapter books that I was still reading. Not another, because I'm not embarrassed about my manga reading phase, even though I don't choose to read it anymore. But a phase that I am embarrassed about is my vampire phase. I think the first vampire book I read was Cirque du Freak, and I thought it was really entertaining. I had never read any other vampire books, but I kind of knew what vampires were, and it was kind of interesting to see his like adventures and him coming to terms with being a vampire and that kind of thing. And as with a lot of my friends, I kind of tended towards the more kind of punk-y things, like some of the emo rock, some darker colors, some baggier clothes, stuff like that. They all kind of liked vampires. I thought they were fine, and I read Cirque du Freak and liked it. I was part of a group in my high school library that kind of reviewed books, and like new books were kind of brought to our attention before anybody else. But we would have a small kind of meeting in the library every week or so, and the librarian would say, hey, here are the new books I got for our library. Who would like to volunteer to read these and like write a review, or like tell me if you think this is a series we should continue to get or not, and helpful stuff like that. And I loved it. It made me feel very, very useful. And I got to read a lot of newer releases that way. So since me and my friends were reading all the new books, when Twilight came out, some of them who enjoyed vampires more really jumped at the chance to read the newest vampire book. And I remember I didn't really care much either way, that somebody else had picked it up instead. And then I had like multiple friends that were like, you need to read this book. And I was like, really? It's that good? They were like, you gotta read it. And while I did read the whole thing, I distinctly remember in book 2 having the thought of, I don't enjoy this book enough to read it again. A lot of times when I was reading a book, I would sometimes have the thought of, I need to write this down to like buy this later. Like, I'm just enjoying this so much. And I distinctly remember having the opposite thought while reading Twilight. But everybody seemed to love it. Everybody seemed to be talking about it. So I read the whole series. And then later I found out that there was movies and all that madness. And I have conflicted feelings because I like to say that I'm a hipster and I read it before it was cool. I definitely did not pick it up because everyone was reading it. Just my friend group was reading it. And so I kind of felt it necessary to read it. But I also didn't like it, so I don't want to proudly proclaim I read it before it was cool. But that's everything up to high school. So as you can imagine, once I got out of high school and started college, there was very little time for reading. So I started with like one class in the summer. I also had to continue to work at Burger King throughout most of college. That was the first job I got whenever I graduated and I got a car. And so it just seemed the easiest to transfer to a Burger King already in Carbondale, which is where I went to school, as opposed to once moving there, trying to find a job. So since it felt like I had a lot less free time with all my classes and work, I often found it more relaxing to watch TV or play video games instead of reading. I felt like those were kind of, they got my fun meter up faster, to use sim lingo. Reading's kind of fun, but it can also be hit or miss. So I had to work. I, at one time, had 3 jobs and my schooling. And since I was going to school for graphic design, it wasn't like I had a reading assignment I could fudge or skim or find the deets online. And like, if you didn't spend like 4 hours on your project, it was very clear. And so I couldn't really fudge that stuff, and I had to do the work. But I'm the kind of person who would have done it anyway. But one of the things I was looking forward to the most after graduating was that I thought that with my big girl job, with my degree, I would have all this free time and I could get back into reading. It was really hard to find a big girl job. After trying to get a job utilizing my design skills, and I couldn't, and my savings account was dwindling, I decided to turn to retail. I knew that I didn't like my food experience back from when I worked at Burger King, and so I decided, well, I thought of what shops I like to be in. I love Barnes & Noble, GameStop, and Best Buy. I actually got really lucky in that I got a job at Barnes & Noble and a job at Best Buy. And just the way that things worked out, I was a lot more engaged and utilized over at Barnes & Noble first. And unfortunately, I worked in the cafe. I wasn't able to be a bookseller, but I was still around books a lot. And I was around coffee a lot. And so I loved being in that environment. I would usually pick up a book and read a little bit on my break. And then that turned into reading enough of it that I really wanted to just like keep it. They have a way that you can kind of check out a book to take home with you and continue to read it there if you like. They kind of get to benefit from that too, because you're then able to tell people about these stories and maybe recommend books to them. But I always worried that I would lose it or bang it up or something like that. So I just ended up buying all the books I wanted. And unfortunately, since I was there so often, I was seeing all these wonderful books every single day. So I remember the first book that I made a move on actually buying and not just reading during my breaks was The Red Queen. This was about the same time when this series came out, and I thought it looked so cool. As a designer, I do often judge a book by its cover. And so I was enjoying it enough that I just decided to buy it. And that's when I started my crippling addiction to buying books instead of just reading them at the library. I imposed a limit on myself that I still stick to even now, and I only buy $100 worth of books at a time. If I can find them on sale or a used copy, even better. That means I get more books, not that I get to spend more money. Now that I'm not so often just walking around shops, it's a lot easier to impose that dollar limit. But so that's what I started doing there. I would pick up a few books that I wanted to read, make sure that the total was 100 or lower, read through that stack of books until I got to the last one, and then I'd allow myself to buy more. So Barnes & Noble helped me helped push me, I think, a little faster into rediscovering my love of books and letting myself indulge in that again. It can be hard to keep up with 2 jobs and keeping schedules straight and everything like that. And Best Buy was the first one to offer me a full-time position. So then I was eventually able to only work at Best Buy. It was nice to only have one job to worry about, and it really helped me avoid the temptation to kind of randomly acquire books. So I more stringently stuck to my schedule of like book buying hauls every now and then, as opposed to getting one every time I went to work. So a couple things happened with my increased time spent reading. I wanted to talk about my books more. Since we moved to a different state, I didn't have my friends immediately around me to tell them about the stories I was reading. I only had my fella, and I love him to pieces, and he usually listens, but you can tell he would rather not have to listen to me recount these books a while after reading them and mixing things up. Like, I get it, but I'm excited, so I want to talk about it. And one of my stepsisters actually also loves reading too, like about as much as I loved reading in high school. We are at odds though, because she prefers reading digitally and I just cannot. I need a physical copy. But other than that, we both like the same sorts of books. So one time on a visit, I got to sit down with her. We geeked out about books. I recommended to her a few of my favorite series. And then later I thought about, oh my God, wait a minute. This one series has a lot of sex in it. And when I was a lot younger, even then, sometimes I would think, oh, when I eventually have a kid, I want to read them this book or recommend them this book or something like that. And this is probably a book I would have recommended to my kids, or maybe even tried to sit down and read with them. And it would have been really, no matter what, it would have been really embarrassing. And so I'm glad that instead this happened with a stepsister, not a child. But that got me to thinking that I would like to make notes on each book that I read on about how appropriate or not it is for someone to read. And I don't like the just blanket idea of saying this is good for 6 and up, this is good for 12 and up, because not everybody matures at the same rate or can handle the same things. So instead I tried to break it down into what I think some troubling areas would be, and so people can assess, like, say, how violent or how romantically intimate a book gets. And if it's too much for them, then they can choose to not read it or be reminded of this and not recommend it to somebody. So I initially started doing these written reviews for me, just for reference for me when I get older and I have kids. And then I started putting them on my blog because I already had a blog anyway, so why not? You know, somebody finds it cool, and if nobody does, it's fine. It's for me. And then I started seeing some booktube channels, and I thought it was just so neat to listen to other people talk about books and get excited about new releases, and kind of have themed videos where they talk about like maybe a few recent horror books or like high fantasy books or something like that. So I kind of wanted to be a part of it. I also was being recommended a lot of monthly box subscriptions for books. And so I decided that I would dip my toes in the water by buying one of those boxes and filming the unboxing. So I slowly progressed from doing the unboxing videos to doing the unboxing videos and the review of the book that I got in the unboxing, to now I do the unboxing and every book that I read. I do a review. I have a list of other book ideas, this being one of them, but I haven't quite gotten around to them yet, so that's all I've done as of now, but I hope to expand it to even more book-related topics. So now here I am putting out a video every Friday, and I'm really loving it. I feel like it's a great way for me to tie in my design background, and I just enjoy it so much. I enjoy the making the video, I enjoy getting to talk about the books that I'm reading, and it gives me something more purposeful to do with my free time. So that's my bookish journey that's made me the person I am today. I'm really enjoying where I'm at now, that I'm reading a few books that are new and getting to be excited with people for new releases, but I'm also getting to go back, and either that's because of recommendations from new bookish influences that are in my life, or maybe it's just books that I missed out on during my dearth of reading, and I really just get to embrace all that. And I love seeing the difference in narratives and how some story might tell a good story but maybe have lame characters, and one might have great character development or well-rounded people but there's maybe not a lot going on, and like really reinforcing the hero's journey and stuff like that. And I just love collecting all this literary knowledge and experiences, and I feel like there's usually something of value in every tale. So I think that it's really fun to sit down and read all these different books and examine the similarities and the differences. And I'm not gonna lie, I get really excited when I see a video that does a little bit better than like my average one. Maybe this one has a few more views or a few more likes or something like that. That just really warms my heart and gives me encouragement to keep doing this. But I think I would continue to do it anyway, because it feels like there's a little bit more companionship in my reading now, as opposed to just sitting on my lonely couch reading a book, finishing it, starting a new one. Yeah, I can have literary friends, but it's nice to have literary friends. So I just want to thank you so much for stopping by today and letting me get the chance to more fully introduce myself. And I hope that you stick around and check out some other videos on my channel. Or thank you for watching this one too, even if you've seen some of my reviews and feel like you kind of know me. Just appreciate every single one of you. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. And I hope I get to see you again in another video. Bye for now.